Hello, and welcome to the 6th edition of the Game Developers Refuge podcast for Saturday, March 1st, 2008. With me today, I have Kenny.
Yo.
Mike.
Hi.
And one newcomer, Brigham.
Oh.
Awesome.
Yeah, did I say yo?
Alright, so the first topic we were going to cover today was, quote, foot in the door. And while none of us here work in the actual development industry, we wanted to discuss a little bit of how we got our foot in the door with game development in general. You know, kind of what turned us on into game dev. And Brigham is going to lead us off with that discussion. So go ahead, take it away.
Well, actually, when I was in high school, I was taking a 3D animation class. It was through ROP. So there was a whole bunch of people doing all kinds of stuff, and of course, you know, people started making game-type models and things. So a group of us got together and were like, hey man, let's make a game. And we're like, okay, that sounds great. We'll do an RPG, and we have all these ideas. And then it's like, okay, so who knows how to program? And we were all kind of twiddling our thumbs and whistling a little bit. So that's when I started actually learning to program in C, which I failed miserably at. So I switched to BASIC, and then went back to C, and I was doing okay. But that pretty much got me started on the road to wanting to make games right there. I mean, aside from, you know, being a little kid and you're just like, oh wow, I want to make a cool game. But as far as actually seriously starting to pursue it, that was my senior year of high school, some years ago, when that all got started for me.
You mentioned BASIC. What system were you developing with BASIC on? Was it a Windows box or something else?
Oh, actually, I was, what did I do? I started with QBasic on Windows 2000, I think. Maybe even 98, because this was, I graduated in 2000, so I not even been Win2K out yet, so.
I only ask because, and we'll get to this when I start talking about mine, but mine involves BASIC, but I think you'll all be surprised when I tell you which actual computing system I was developing with BASIC on.
Is it Commodore?
Well, we'll get to that. So, did you ever end up developing a project with these guys who you were all up and about with doing game development, or did you kind of just end up doing development yourself, and it just ended up being yourself?
Oh, man, you know, I'm sure a lot of people will be able to say exactly the same thing, but by the time I got to a point where I could actually be good enough to develop something playable, I totally lost track of all those guys. So, I mean, the project was pretty much stillborn from the beginning. It never went anywhere, but I've had so many just random projects where it's like, all right, I'll make this and this and this, and then like nothing happens really. So I scale it back and then scale it back and scale it back, and then I've got this long list of epic, you know, development coding journeys that never went anywhere. So eventually I just get back to let's make a sprite bounce around on the screen, and that works. And then you just, you know, work your way back up from that point.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that.
Exactly. Ooh, dead projects. What a good topic. Anyway, on the topic of your BASIC stuff, before you got into C, were you doing anything graphical with BASIC? Because I know, you know, a whole bunch of years ago, there was a big whole development scene with doing actual graphical games in BASIC. So you're just text-based, or?
Actually, I was just using it. I never made any real games with it. The very first program, aside from, like, when I was 8, I wrote a BASIC program that printed, now deleting hard drive, like a million times on the screen, and I ran and got my mom like, oh my god, what's going on? And she's like, oh no, what, the computer? And I was like, oh, just kidding. But my first, you know, actual program was, it happened to be around my brother's birthday at the time. So I,
Did you delete his hard drive for his birthday?
Yes. No. I just wrote like a little interactive, birthday card or something where it's like, hello, what's your name? And you type in your name, and if it wasn't my brother's name, he's like, oh, this is not for you. Goodbye.
Oh.
And then if it matches the name properly, then it's like, oh, hi, happy birthday. The end. So that was, it was a piece of crap, little nothing, but it really sort of allowed C to make sense for me, because I was trying to learn C, and I was like, what is this nonsense? So I switched to basic, and I was like, oh, this is easy. And then suddenly it's like, oh, that's what they're talking about in the C book that I had. So
a lot of the old, a lot of the really old C resources were just terrible. So when I moved from basic to C, it was really painful.
Yeah, I had actually a pretty good one called Practical C by O'Reilly, I believe. It's the one with the cow on the cover. It was pretty good. Just the concepts were above my head when I first started trying.
I can't believe you remember which animal was on the cover, because I was just going to ask you that question.
Actually, I have that book, so I mean, I've spent numerous hours with that thing. So it's totally the cow book.
All right, one more question from me, at least, before we move on to Kenny. I was kind of interested in how your thought process was regarding the difficulty of doing development. C was pretty difficult, so then you jump back to basic, and then you move from basic to C. So as you were learning how to do new things, was it frustrating or kind of exciting? It's always interesting to see how other developers felt along their process of learning how to actually program and then finally be able to create content. So were there times where you were like, oh, forget this is too retarded or too difficult, I don't understand how to do it? Or was it mostly like, oh yeah, I got this thing done, so let's work on this other thing?
It actually is a little bit of both. I think I put away programming, stuck it on a shelf in the back of my mind several times throughout the years. Kind of like I did the same thing with learning tracking software for making music. I just started poking around with it and didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I just put it away and then came back to it later and made more progress. So I did that several times when I was learning to program, because I didn't actually take any formal courses until actually I already knew the languages and the programming concepts. So it was more for an educational requirement towards a degree than to actually learn the concepts in that regard.
That's one in the bag with me and a bunch of my friends want to make a sweet RPG. Let's see what Kenny's story is.
Oh man, I'm trying to figure out where to begin. I was always really big, games junkie since I was 5, and my dad was bringing home an Atari and a little Commodore 64 and all that. And I tinkered around a lot with it, and just made some little crappy little programs, some little yes, no, simple. Real very, very simple parser type games, adventure games. They never really went anywhere, and I never really took it seriously. Where that kind of turned around was when, this was about 1993 or so, and I was a really, really big BBS junkie. I'd basically get home at I don't know, whenever the hell I got home from school. I guess it was 3:30 or 4 or something. I'd hop on the phone. I'd be on the phone all night, and so I started playing the door games, like Trade Wars and Alpha Empires and Operation Overkill and all that crap. Yeah, it got really bad. I was becoming hopelessly addicted to that. So I was like, oh man, maybe I got a problem or something. I should stop playing this stuff. And then light bulb goes off in the head and it goes, oh Jesus, dude, I should make one of these. So we had already become involved, me and my friends, in hacking the WWIV source code for the board that we were running. And it actually came with a little header that you could put in your program so you could load up and make basically your own games. So I started working on one, and this was the very first point in my life that I had actually seriously decided to make a game. So what I decided to do was, rather than doing anything seriously original, I decided to pull from my experience. I said, okay, what will we do if we get Trade Wars 2002, and then we get Operation Overkill, and then we get Dune 2, and we put them all in a blender and we pretend that they had this horrible bastard child. And no, seriously, I went ahead and I culled the best ideas from all three of those games, and I put them together into a single user online game. I mean, since it's a bulletin board, only one person can be on at a time, so, it plays single player, but when you're done, everybody else gets to log in, and, so you can have dozens or hundreds of people playing during the day. It depends on how long people stay logged in. So anyways, I started working on it, and realistically, looking at it as someone who's actually finished projects now, I would say I probably got about halfway through it. I mean, I had all the menus created, and I had a bunch of crappy little ANSI drawings, and I had like the user login and the save games, and all the like miserable back end stuff going. Problem is that I still was not very good at C programming. I'd been doing BASIC for a while, and I'd just been getting into C. And to be perfectly honest, I sucked balls at it, right? I had like buffer overruns and like pointers going all over the place, and I was just mismanaging my strings, and crap was going everywhere, and it was under DOS, and we didn't have memory protection. And it's like it would work, but about 3 seconds into it, it would get some sort of like random memory bug because I was just injecting values all over the damn memory where it wasn't supposed to go. Finally, I said, I got another problem, so I dropped it. I was really busy with college at the time, and I said I should probably revisit this when I actually have some time to do this, and I have some actual real skill, and I know what I'm doing. Because at that point in C, I was completely self-taught, so badly I might add. It probably could have ended up being a good game if it had been made about 4 years earlier, and I had actually known what I was doing. I think it probably could have been rather popular, maybe, but as it was, it's just, another little abortion child product that's sitting on my hard drive. I actually still have it.
Anyway, so I did have a question that I wanted to ask. You mentioned that you were working on this game while you were in college, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of when you started thinking that you wanted to get into game development stuff.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, the whole programming aspect of my life was kind of an afterthought. I was originally going to journalism, and it was what I intended to major in and everything. And then I got into college, and I was going through orientation, and I was just kind of sitting there one day, and I thought, I do nothing but programming all day long when I'm not going out with my friends or whatnot. And just sort of light bulb goes off in the head, and it's like, geez, dude, maybe you should be a programmer. And that sort of led into it. Because, we'd been doing so much programming, making our own little utilities, and we had made like some little scrollies and some cracks and, some little save game editors and stuff for like local groups and stuff. And I never really put two and two together and said, oh, dear God, I could do this as, like for a living. But yeah, when I got into college, I went ahead and changed my major to computer engineering and started to get a little bit heavier into game programming. And then about 2 years later, I was seriously introduced to console gaming for the first time. I've been like a diehard PC guy for the last 4 or 5 years. And the introduction to all of the just absolutely crazy, zany stuff that was coming out of Japan, it kind of overloaded my system, and I said, oh God, I gotta make games now. I had all these crazy ideas, and I suddenly realized this was a viable medium, if you will, for getting all of this craziness out of my system. You can do that in games and you can get away with it. But if you were to write a novel about a lawn gnome that runs around like raping goats or something, nobody's going to read that. Well, God, I hope not.
Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble a bit, so next question.
I did have a question. Damn it, I forgot what it was.
I have that effect on people.
Yes. Mother. Oh, yes, that's right. So you mentioned that, someone, we don't know who, this awesome person who introduced you to console gaming. What system was the first console system that you experienced?
Actually, the first console system that I experienced was the NES. It was very limited, though. I played like Super Mario Brothers, and I played all of about maybe half an hour of the original Legend of Zelda. But the console where I really got my start was the Super Nintendo. Oh, good God, I don't even remember the first game I played. It was probably some old like crappy Enix RPG like Soul Blazer or something like that, and Gargoyle's Quest and Kirby and some other crap. And it was a real shock for me because everything in the PC gaming world, at least on the Western side of things, it's all very cut and dry. It's all very Dungeons and Dragons inspired. It feels practiced. It feels kind of rote. It feels kind of expected. And then when you see like this little pink puffball rolling around and it's like sucking things in and getting powers and stuff, you go, oh man, this is like I just smoked an entire garbage bag full of hash and fell off a building or something.